Right, welcome. This is kind of a follow-on from my last video on Disney where we were discussing their credit rating, stocks and shares and things like that. This is to do with their quarterly earnings call. And like I say, it's a follow-on. So there'll be some things which I've already covered and things like that, but it kind of expands it a bit further. Plus, I also think coming at this from, as much as I'm not a huge Disney fan, but there's a lot of people that are saying, oh, they're completely done for and things like this. And they're really not. So we'll kind of touch on that as well. Before we get into it, please, guys, I know I keep saying it, but this video is sponsored by my original film. I am making a film. Yes, I know. Sounds weird, but check it out. It is a fantasy horror film. Vikings crossed with Hellraiser crossed with The Thing. I know that is legitimately what we're doing here. But check it out. It's linked down below. Need your help to smash into the second target. But anyway, look, that out of the way, let's get into it. This article is linked down below in the description box. So, okay, look, Disney reveals massive loss of income during the coronavirus pandemic. We knew that this was going to happen, right? They have suspended dividend payments, okay? But let's get into exactly how bad it is for them. Because, I mean, it is really, really quite bad. But inevitably they're going to bounce back. And I am not a defender of Disney by any stretch of the imagination. Anyone who watches my channel will be well aware of that. It's just business. They will bounce back. But they'll have to be careful. And I think that's by and large why Bob Iger has come back on board as basically acting CEO. So, let's check it out. Okay, this was the Quarterly 2 2020 earnings call. Disney's Senior Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, Christine McCarthy, reported that the company has lost as much as $1.4 billion in income. Okay, not a surprise. No one should be surprised by this news. Okay, they really should not be surprised. I think what's interesting is, yeah, we've got these numbers. I'd love to hear what's happening with Warner Brothers, what's happening with HBO, obviously, Time Warner, so on and so forth. It would just be really interesting to see how everyone is affected. Even the likes of Blumhouse, because we know that they have fired a whole bunch of staff. It'd be interesting to see how they're affected as well. Now, obviously it says, from a financial standpoint, we estimated the adverse impact of COVID-19 related disruption on our second quarter operating income was as much as $1.4 billion, with the majority of that impact at our parks, experiences, and product segment. We knew that was going to be the case. Like I said in the last video, I think they lose on average about $300 million a day. It is just a monumental figure that they lose whilst the parks are closed. It's just insanity. Now, McCarthy added, as a result, excluding certain items affecting comparability, earnings per share from continuing operations for the second quarter were 60 cents. Despite announcing that the shutdown caused by the Chinese virus caused them to lose it's great that they're calling it the Chinese virus on this website. I mean, it is true. I just find it funny. It caused them to lose as much as $1.4 billion. McCarthy spun a positive tale. Well, I'll just go into it. It's an investor's call. She explained our balance sheet and liquidity remains strong. I mean, it does. Genuinely does. Now, she goes on to say that those who have followed the company over the years know that we have historically taken a prudent approach to managing our balance sheet and liquidity. Now, the problem here is they did go through a huge period of buying things up. Too much, in fact. And they will inevitably bounce back from this, and I'm not saying that I particularly want them to. I would want them to only for smaller people's jobs. They obviously employ a lot of people. That would be millions unemployed, which is that would be a travesty. But anyway, they will inevitably bounce back from this only if they remain cautious moving forwards. They will have to rein everything back in. I can't imagine they're going to make huge, wild, risky decisions moving forwards. I think we may even see some slight changes in the wind in terms of the agendas and stuff like that. But it's so likely that they'll bounce back from this. I highly doubt that they're going to go under. even then as well, you got to remember that these companies that have such huge assets like this, if they're on the brink, they just get purchased anyway. So for those that are like, yeah, down with Disney, that's fine, but you don't understand business, because the likelihood is that they will literally just get purchased by another company, and there'll be Disney et al. Or do you know what I mean? So we need to keep all of this in mind when we talk about these companies and these earnings calls. Now, I said, obviously, so despite the current business challenges, we believe we start from a position of relative strength. Later, she stated, we are evaluating a wide range of scenarios with respect to the potential ongoing impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on our businesses while prudently managing cash outflows. And overall, we feel confident in our ability to manage through the crisis. And they did. I mean, they went off and accrued debt to generate cash flow. So they do have money. They've got cash flow there, which makes sense. And again, I'd imagine they did it for good reason, because they were furloughing staff, and I think that they were paid, if I remember rightly. So they were actually doing the right thing for a change. And I know it burns me to be positive with respect to Disney, but yes, it does need to be said. Now, obviously, she would then go and say that the company was in a strong position. McCarthy did announce that they would suspend their semi-annual dividend payout. Now, there's two ways of looking at that, right? Because this article is framing it as, oh, well, they're lying then. But can you imagine the outrage if they did pay the dividend payout? Really? Come on. To be, generating debt and cash flow and things like this, and the stocks going down, and then they were still to pay themselves dividends, the outrage would be madness. And this is what I mean when I say I try to come from this from an unbiased approach, because if that was the case and they did a dividend payout, my God, guys, you better believe the outrage would just be insane. It would be insane. So it's really important to not lose sight of the fact that what they're doing here is actually good, right? And again, pains me to say it's Disney, but they're doing good stuff. I mean, not giving themselves dividends is great. We in the UK, we bailed out all of our banks, and they were still giving themselves massive bankers bonuses and stuff like that. And the outrage was fucking monumental. People were so pissed. And again, it'd be the same if Disney were doing it here. Now, McCarthy detailed, from a cash flow standpoint, the board has made the decision to forego payment of the semi-annual dividend for the first half of the fiscal year, which would have been payable in July. She continued that this preserves about $1.6 billion in cash, assuming we had held the dividend constant at $88, 88 cents, per share. You got to forgive me, guys, it's not my native currency. Now, YouTubers Clownfish would go on and say how it's really, really bad, and it is really, really bad. But you got to remember, it's an earnings call. They're talking to investors, so yeah, of course. And interestingly enough, I feel like this is where fundamentally some people just don't understand how brand recognition matters. So, the comments here are, our brand means more and is more important than all of the bad news. That is literally what they kept doing. Well, yeah, but they're right. They are actually right, because like I say, even if they were to go under, they're just going to get purchased anyway, because it's a brand. So there's all of these investors that will inevitably get something along the line anyway. And this is a Q2 earnings call. They have to frame it as positive. But what they're doing here is actually positive. Suspending dividends, I mean, we'd all be in outrage if they just give themselves a massive payout, wouldn't we? Yes. Come on. Now, McCarthy did do some spinning, again, important to note though, it is an earnings call, in order to justify an 11% drop in attendance at the domestic parks that include Walt Disney World and Disneyland. She noted it was due to those parks shutting down, which is probably wrong, because we knew that Galaxy's Edge had low attendance anyway. Now, McCarthy spun, I'll remind you that the Disneyland Resort closed on March 14th and the Walt Disney World closed March 16th. We estimate that the closure of our domestic parks has an adverse impact on attendance growth of approximately 18% points, which, makes perfect sense. Not only was attendance at the parks down, but McCarthy also revealed that occupancy at the hotels were also down. Well, yeah, no shit, because it's all closed. Again, we're so quick to jump on these because we hate them, but some of this is just obvious. Frankly, we would not reopen any park unless we can make at least a positive contribution to that overhead and operating profit level. Now, that's interesting. I think that they're saying that. Now, Chapek was also non-committal regarding major film releases. Yeah, we don't have releases for any of these things anymore. I believe they moved back the Black Widow and things like that. They've got release dates as far as I'm aware, but Mulan currently doesn't have a release date. It's been delayed indefinitely, at least in China for sure. Now, Chapek said, and I quote, "We're going to get a pretty good idea of that because there is a competitive movie that opens up 1 week before our film does." Okay, so maybe it is. Maybe he's talking about the US and UK release. At that point, we're hoping that there is some return to semblance of normality in terms of number of screens that are open and a number of show times for those movies. Yep, fine. Now, again, in terms of like everyone kind of jumping on them and, you know, saying, "Oh, screw Disney, blah, blah, blah." Though another YouTubers would point out massive loss occurred with Disneyland and Walt Disney World being shut down for about 2 weeks. Yeah, again, like I say, like 300 million a day. It's not a small amount. The losses in Q3 are more than likely going to be much more substantial. And like I say, this goes all the way back to what I did in my previous video, is that they're not going to start to return to normal until 2022. And even then, it's going to be a new kind of normal. So we know that we knew that this was going to happen. But jumping on them for no dividends and things like that, or spinning this as somewhat positive, is a bit silly, because dividends, we'd slam them if they didn't pay dividend payout. We would absolutely, well, if they did pay dividend payout, we'd slam them. Them not doing that is actually a good thing. Their brand is strong. There's no two ways about it. I mean, we're talking about it, aren't we, on YouTube? So, you know, their brand is strong. Obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be making videos about it. These videos get views, right? So, yeah, their brand name is strong. People love to hate them, but unfortunately, that hate tends to cloud logical judgment at certain points in time. But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this total shit show down below in the comment section. If you're new here, do hit subscribe. Stay up to date on the world of pop culture and movie news by hitting the bell notification icon. Thank you so much though, guys. Have a missed age. Take care.